Hello and welcome to a long-awaited return to Sapphire Steel, or some sort of look at it in a competitive light, because a set 9 unvolves as it happens. We're looking at all the most popular decks, and it looks like Amethyst really, basically the ability to use the genie is the best way to win in set 9. So blurple comes with the Elsa Bell genie, sort of win the evasion, win the control. Purple Steel can do a similar job. So the other decks kind of are looking how to do it. Amber Steel has its own thing with its aggro, but it's really strange how much Sapphire Steel has come along, and it has a lot of interesting things it can do in this set. Some plays that I think that are more powerful than any other deck can do. So we're going to get into that. And if you want to look at some more set 9 unboxing over on Ali's channel, should be in the comments as well. She's gone through the Trove already, and she'll be going through the starter decks soon. And there's some really cool hits in there. We had a lot of fun opening it, so thank you very much, Ravensburger. But going into the video, yeah, Sapphire Steel in set 9, it feels, because every other deck has been brought down to a certain power level. Sapphire Steel kind of can meet them at that power level, and a lot of the stuff that they were building up with the theming of the deck, with the allies, kind of can now come into play, and it's actually generally a bit more powerful than most people predicted. I would say the deck right now, it's in testing, it's still early on. It was only really like 2 days ago that I've seen what you can do with the new Scar card and buffing it using support, and having some really good fun with all of the ally cards. It's only really recently that I've realized I've been testing all of this, but honestly, before that, I've still been loving Sapphire Steel allies, and the Jasmine package is really quite fun. Like, it's on a power level. Again, this is something that Sapphire Steel can do that other decks can't right now. It has things in the deck that no other deck can do, and it's just can blow out a game if they have no response, no way to deal with it. Still, I think over a long period of time, these Amethyst decks might win just on their consistency. You know, like protecting a 2-quested genie with evasion is huge, and Purple Steel's ability to just positively produce card draw with all of its cantrips, and then draw more of Yuzma and Doc and stuff like that. But what Sapphire Steel allies can do is completely blow out games and have options where your opponent really couldn't have done anything. So we have the Jasmine shift line, which if no one really knows about it, it's been around since the last set. People have enjoyed it. It's good fun. But right now, without Brawl, without singing Along Came Zeus, you know, the options to remove her have become a lot less. And it, honestly, if you're on the play and maybe they missed their turn 1 and you shift this on turn 2, you're getting at least 3 cards drawn or so, and then at some point you can always just dump the pleakley into it. And to give you sort of a understanding of my opinion of why this deck has this ability to just absolutely blow out games and just be undefeated, if it all works and everything aligns, you can play Jasmine on 1, shift her on 2, and if you're on the play, you maybe get a couple quests in, you get to grab a couple cards. On the draw, maybe you might only get 1 quest in, and then when you're done with her and you just want to say, right, if I turn her sideways, they have a Captain Hook and a Calhoun, or they have a Calhoun and they're going to play Lilo, or they're just going to remove her. I need to find something else for her to do. You can play pleakley. And what pleakley will do is put both the shifted and the 4-drop Jasmine into the inkwell. It'll get you to 5 ink, and then the next turn you can ink and you can play a Tinkerbell. And at this point, you know, you're getting 3/4s that can trade up with their 3/3s or you know, Captain Hooks or whatever. And then you've got Tinkerbell as well, doing 1 damage across the board. And it's just this really strong, overwhelming board presence. And then from there, hopefully, because the deck is so built on the top end, you know, you're going to be drawing Hades or Vincenko's to just keep throwing on the board. And if not, maybe you can set up a Scar and a Doc just to refill the hand if you ever draw into a Doc. You can do some really amazing powerful lines like that. And then the other powerful line that, again, is just going to blow people away, and there's really not much they can do because there's not much ways to interact with opponents' boards outside of Blurple's Elsa and Exert and pretty much Elsa Exert and Singing Strength are your only 2 ways to interact in set 9. It is mad game design, but that's where we're at, and I'm still having a blast playing it. Maybe not as much fun as I thought I was having, but I'm still having a great time. The other amazing powerful thing is you can set up this Scar card. And what Scar does is he gives all your allies +1 strength, which is just great in an ally build. I originally just really disliked Scar until I've seen about this support buff gimmick that happened, and it's really changed my mind on it. So you can play Scar, give all of your allies +1, and I think you're going to find niche moments where that's really useful. Like, so your 3/4 genie is now a 4/4, so it can take out your opponent's evasive genie. The same with Mr. Smee as well. Just the maths on everything just gets a bit better, which is just awesome in general. And then when he's exerted, you can banish one of your allies and draw cards equal to how much strength they have, and then you discard 2 at the top at the end. And to be honest with you, the discard 2 always felt like the reason why I didn't like the card. It was like, what? I've got to banish a Tipo and I'll lose card advantage. But no, it's pairing it with stuff like the Alice Growing Girl is just amazing. Alice Growing Girl gives everything support. All of your characters support besides herself. So if you had a board, say, where you had Scar out, you had a pleakley out and a Tipo, let's just put that, and then you play Alice Growing Pain. You quest with the Scar and you give the support to the Tipo. You quest with the pleakley, you give the support to the Tipo, and you banish the Tipo. And because you're getting +1 from the ally thing that Scar gives, and 5 support onto there, so he's already a 7, and then you're putting another 4 from the pleakley, that goes up to 11. So you draw 11 cards and then you discard 2, and that, in a set where card advantage and like resource like rewarding and you know, just out resourcing your opponent, just all those things is so hard to do. You can have these amazing combos where you can set that up and do all of it. It is really quite interesting working with support and buffing up these smaller things like a Tipo, that, you know, something that's just going to be on the board and you don't really mind if it's banished. Or, you know, again, we can do the thing that we mentioned about Jasmine and pleakley. We can buff up the genie, the 3 cost, and say after he's traded and took out the purple genie, and you know they're going to get it on the snapback with like a Calhoun, or, you know, they're just going to remove it. You can use Scar to banish it, remove it, and Scar being a 5/4 turns, he has to be turned sideways to get really any benefit from him, was another thing that I just didn't like about the card. But it begins a spot where if you're able to do this and develop a Tinkerbell, or, you know, something else is big, maybe another Jasmine, it gets to the point where your opponent really doesn't have an option, that they can only remove one big thing a turn, and they're probably going to put it into Scar. And if they put it in Scar, it means Tinkerbell survives, and if Tinkerbell doesn't, you know, Jasmine does, or whatever, you can just like overwhelm the board. And because we use ramp, we can overwhelm the board a lot easier. We can take our time to set these things up. Against things like Amber Still Aggro, we can't, but we can use all of the support damage buff stuff. And that is something with support I've never known it was. I always thought support was challenger. I didn't know it was actually just you get a strength buff, which makes it even better. That's how all of this comes together. And it's hard to say if the Alice is really a requirement for the deck, because there are some ally support cards. We've got a 1-drop Nick Wild. I always get Nick Wild and Nick Fury mixed up, but one of them is an Avenger, I believe. I always get them two mixed up. So we have a 1-drop there that I think it gets a plus strength buff if there's a support character on board, or something along those lines. And there's a Clarabelle 4-drop that's a 3/3 quest for 2, and when it quests, it can give support as well. So there are other options to get the support. There's the Huey, Dewey, and Louie package that just seems mad, and most of those cards have support on there, and on top of that they have their own bonuses as well, and they're all allies. So there's some really cool stuff you can do, and it's the debate where, do we really need Alice as well? Because it's a very interesting card. It gets us these crazy numbers from support, and buffing up like T-pose to be 11 strength or whatever, so that's really awesome as well. But that's kind of just been the first thing of, hang on, wait a minute, you know, if we can buff up one of these allies to be huge and then banish it, Scar's pretty good. And that was also, again, one of my points of Scar was, you know, people are, we'll banish your Lawrence. It's like, you draw 5, discard 2, and you got rid of your Lawrence, and your board pressure's gone. And in a like set where basically everything's like a trench warfare, it's kind of a bit ridiculous to do that play. So is just, with the ability to buff up these smaller characters, has just made for some really interesting gameplay, and really just created a pretty powerful deck that's actually competing at higher levels. On the sim we don't talk about, we managed to get up to 9th, I think it was, just playing this. And right now there's a lot of sort of surprise factor in this. There's not many other people were playing it. I'd seen basically people at their locals were saying they played it, and I'm very grateful that people sent me their lists, and I check all the discords as well, and the lists were popping up. So this sort of Scar seems pretty good. It has been kind of the big assumption for Sapphire Steel, and it kind of looks like the most optimal way to build it in this ally based build. And using Jasmine can be an absolute just like huge power wave for you if you can shift her on the play. It's insane. On the draw, it's also pretty good. So using the whole ally thing has been the biggest thing to do. But the deck still doesn't come without its faults. I think it's right now it's very shiny and it's new and it's very fun for everyone to play. I definitely think if you want to have a good time in set 9 right now, this is the kind of deck you want to pick up. It's just a lot of fun, you know, when you get to the point where you're drawing 12 cards and discarding 2, and then from then on out you might be about 7 ink anyway, so you're just slamming everything that's expensive in the deck, and then maybe double spelling. You've got too many options in your hand almost at some points. All those things, and then even trying to get the questing buff from Alice with +4 is awesome. You can sometimes get to that point as well. So it's very fun. It's very new. It's got that kind of shiny new look to it. Playing it, if you played it for a considerable amount of time, which to be honest, I've played it for quite a considerable amount of time to the point where I'm frustrated with it. It's kind of the same way, in my opinion, that I see the joke that LD made about this, you know, how Green Steel players have gone from Diablo shifting to Jasmine shifting. And it kind of does have that same feel, the way that Green Steel used to be. When Green Steel worked, you know, when you got Diablo shift move Cove, when you got all the right components, you know, you got Ursula double singing, sudden chill with a Prince John out, or double strength, or Let the Storm. When you got everything working and the deck didn't brick, it was a very good deck. It was very powerful. But on the flip side, it sometimes just didn't work. You know, you just drew the cards in the wrong order. You had no pressure on the board. Your opponent's just turning sideways with like a 2-drop and they're winning the game. That can happen with this. It is a fairly dense on lower characters. But, you know, I kind of every game I want to be trying to go for Jasmine Shift because I know how powerful it is when I have that. If I miss it, you know, I'm doing this weird little early curve of maybe some Happies or Mr. Smees just to put some board pressure on. Sometimes I think what I want to do is go into playing Tipo and just say I haven't got Jasmine Shift, but maybe if I just ramp and just play all my big characters, I can do that. And also, if you haven't got Jasmine Shift, you can sometimes just go, I'm going to use Scar instead. I'm going to ramp and play Scar and get some card advantage off that, and then just play big characters every turn. So you do have options, but again, it's sometimes you be like, oh, maybe I've got the 1-drop Jasmine and I really want the 4-drop, so I'll full send the rest because I know I'll win this matchup if I get it. And your hand is just uninkables or top end heavy or a bunch of T-pos and a strength. You know, that's going to happen as well. The same way that, you know, when you had Green Steel, you know, I've got a Diablo 1-drop, I'll just full send for Diablo, and then your hand is all just sudden chills and hypnotize and 6-drop Pete's. You know, it was just the way it works. That can really happen in this deck. It's surprising how much this game has sort of high rolls, I guess, is the way. It doesn't feel like a high roll, doesn't feel like Diablo shift move to Cove, but in a sense it is looking for that same insane value that the deck has the ability to achieve when it operates at 100% of its sort of ability. So all that being said, it's really good fun. It has the ability to not work, and I think managing those games where it doesn't work, maybe looking at shoring up how to win the matchups where it doesn't, you know, maybe play, if you wanted to play this competitively at DLCs, you might want to do testing where, you know, you miss Jasmine shift and see how that works out for you, because to be honest with you, the Jasmine shift games are very easy to pilot. You're just going to walk over them and slam a bunch of allies on the board and just win the game. But when you don't get it, it's trying to manage it, it's trying to find out how to utilize everything that's in the deck when you're not doing that. So I can go through some mulligans, which I thought would be a good idea, and talk about some game plans into different decks. So if we go over to here, we've got a nice hand like this, and as I say, I would say a lot of people are still in the learning curve of this. What I would tend to do is, if this is blind on the play on the draw, I will keep the Jasmine because I really want to get that shift line. If all else fails and I end up getting top end instead of the Jasmine 1-drop, which to be honest with you, looking at this deck, you know, you've got 10 of these, 4 of these, you know, 10 and 7 6s, 4 of them are strengths. You know, you could just get a bunch of T-pos as well, which I kind of do want. You could end up just bricking it and losing the game. So just putting something on the board is nice. And if not, it is set 9, so we do like to go into top deck mode quite heavily. Keeping the 1-drops early means that I can just ink them if I don't get them. And here, you know, the hand's gone a little bit funky. I think what we'd do is ink the Jasmine, play the Happy, set this up, pleakley the 1-drop or whatever, but most likely will be the happy, and then get to a point where we can get Scar out, save this strength for a little bit. And honestly, with Jasmine, I think when you haven't got her as a shift ability, she sometimes can just be ink, because setting it up, trying to quest when your opponent's already set up their board is very tricky to do. I've put cards, I put pleakley in here, oh, it's the same, sorry, Pluto, not pleakley or Tifo. I put Pluto in here to try and get some sort of abilities to protect it. I had Bagheera in for a little bit. It never felt like Bagheera was great. It always felt like they could answer it. So trying to get it to, you know, protect it so we can get some more value out of it. But to be honest with you, if you're not getting her questing by turn 2, I generally can just be an inkable. The only exception for this, if you don't shift Jasmine on 2 and start questing with her, I think the only other exception is really if you were to on the play, you know, Tipo into Jasmine, maybe you could get some use out of her and then pleakley her into the Inkwell, you know, when it looks like it's going to be a threat for her being removed. Majority of the time, if you haven't shifted her on 2, I'd say don't feel too worried about just putting in the Inkwell. Later on in the game, you know, you might just want to be applying some board pressure, so just playing cards on the board is never a bad thing either. You know, if it's like you're trying to just go for game or trying to present such a strong enough board, you know, you've got a Tinkerbell already set up, and maybe you have a pleakley or a Genie, and you've drawn into your hand is Jasmine and a Lilo. Just play the Jasmine just to put some pressure on the board, but don't be afraid to ink her, I think, is my real opinion on that. So going into the next one, like here, again, we're at this strange point where I really want to get the Jasmine shift, so I'm going to do this. We could go one card deeper to try and find it. Let's say this game is on the draw, but if not, we don't find it, we end up might having a really terrible hand. So having a slightly like side game plan to do, which would be that I could Tipo ramp into something else. So we do that, we end up getting it, which is great. I think we could actually even ink this Tipo, or we could keep it. I think actually maybe keep it because we have got 3 uninkables in the hand. We get Jasmine shift down. We hopefully start questing out, filling this hand up full of allies, and if we need to, we draw a pleakley and we can just pleakley her in, set up the scars. You could do some crazy stuff where you could banish Pluto for 6 and draw a bunch, or just he's just a huge threat on the board as well. So I think this hand's not too bad. If maybe 2 scars is not the most optimal thing to look at, but again, here, a game where we don't have any of the components in. I think if you're on the play, all I'm really doing is just keeping the Tipo. I think actually you can keep the happy as well. But most likely, if I'm on the play, I'm going to be inking that happy because I don't know what I'm playing against. And in set 9, you don't draw a lot of cards again. So if we're going to go 1-drop into Tipo ramp into kill our hand, we kind of maybe don't want to do that. So I think we send this back. And it's really trying to, if anyone's mastered this as well, please let me know, is trying to find the way to win these games where you haven't got the Jasmine shift into great use from Scar and playing Tinkerbell and Hades and Vincenzo over and over again. That is the point where you're trying to maximize your win percentage in, because honestly, when you get the deck working and it functions, it's great. It's pretty much undefeated. And I'm going to keep using the green steel as an example of it. You know, the same with that deck. When you get every component working, when you get Diablo shift, when you get everything like right in the correct order, it just autopilots. It's so good. But winning those games where it's not the correct cards in the correct order is very hard to do, compared to a deck where I'd say like blurple right now, where you mulligan for ramp on 2, you ramp on 2 and you play a 4-drop. Genie is the most optimal, but you play a 4-drop, and then hopefully you play a 5-drop, you know, and that's kind of the deck, and that's just autopilot play. It's very consistent, it's very good, it's probably the best deck going right now, whereas this is trying to learn how to win when things don't go exactly your way. And I can mention a few different matchups that you might set into. So blurple for starters, if you're on the play or even on the draw, getting Jasmine shifts, again, it's just always going to be a priority. It requires they have to play a Rafiki. It requires they have to buff up Rafiki or Royal Guard or play the Scrooge, the uninkable one that I'm seeing less and less play of. Getting it down, getting your hand advantage, and then always think that they're going to just on turn 3 play a Genie, the purple Genie, so try get your Genie set up, try get some evasive cover set up, try and get a way to look at the cards that you have in your hand, look at the cards that are in the deck and think, how do I answer it if they play one? Because the thing with that is, 1 card draw, but it just runs away with the game questing, and if they play a second one, that might just be fatal for you. So definitely look at ways to get rid of Genies, get Jasmine shift out, and also keep in mind they probably have the best removal set right now. They have an action that removes things with Into the Unknown. You have Elsa to exert your stuff. They have Bell to move damage over. They have a Hades that removes things as well. They have big bodies, like they have like Scrooge and Iago's and whatever. They have it all basically. So, but the interesting thing of that is if you play Scar and they don't play an Iago or something that has more than 5 health on turn 3, when they Elsa exert, they're going to have to either into the unknown and sing it, or they're going to have to run 2 characters in. I've sometimes, to be honest with you, seen them run a Genie and an Elsa into it. I don't think it's great, but I guess the honest truth is if you could run away with the game with Scar value, it's probably best they did that, and then they try and recoup a win from afterwards and maybe play Dumbos or something. So, yeah, that's always quite interesting against the Blurple matchup. I will say if you play enough of it, I wouldn't feel too disheartened if you lose. You can just lose that matchup quite easily. It's just such a strong, consistent deck, and I feel like with a high rolly deck like this, over X amount of games, you'll end up just losing the games. Like you'll probably end up with a lower win rate. You'll have some games where you absolutely blow them out of the water, and it's like one-sided for you. But then the next few games, it might just be they've just got a Genie and they've protected it, and you weren't able to remove it. So Jasmine ship's really good in that one. All of their removal, they kind of need to interact with their characters, and sometimes they just run them in and get removed. Same with Scar. And then later on in the game, it tends to be sometimes who sees Hades more. And the reason why I put 2 Hades in this was that matchup. Getting to the top end, knowing my only top end was Tinkerbell and Vinchenko, I kind of felt like I needed to play Hades as well, just to try and control the board a bit more. But really, Blurple, if you were to lose that one, like quite a few games and then have an absolute like one-sided game for you, that's kind of how the matchups felt for me. And the other one is Amber Steel Aggro. I'm surprised how little Amber Steel Aggro or Amber Steel, however you want to describe it, there is around right now. People just put up theory lists, and to be honest with you, half of them just look like piles of 2 questers and Doc that they've shoved into a list. And I get it, it's probably going to be that deck where you can just put a bunch of 2 questers in it and it will work. But into this, I feel kind of fine as well. Tinkerbell is a nightmare for that deck unless they can go 5 wide and sing Strength. It's going to be a very great answer to it. You also have the ability to sing Strength as well. You can start harboring up some card advantage. You can go into the late game. Scar giving everything attack buffs is great. They don't really ever want to remove anything from your board because they want to be aggressive. They'll just try and sing a strength once. But, you know, if you can do the classic line of Jasmine, Quest, pleakley into Tinkerbell, you know, you're going to do 1 damage across the board. Pleakley will trade up with things like daisies, and then Tinkerbell will slowly just start winning the board back. Later on in the game, you're just slamming Hades, Vinchenko, more bodies, Alice giving support to stuff. That game should not feel too bad. Of course, as well with that deck, it's very much up there on the tier list. It's above this. It's, I'd say, below Blurple though, but it's pretty good. If they're able to just Tiana lock you out of the game, aggro, and you never see a strength and you never see a Tinkerbell, don't be too disheartened. They're just doing their thing, which is very consistent lore pressure every turn. You'll have to, if they get double docks or whatever, that's kind of rough as well. There's not much you can do there. But besides that, the things with support really, I think, do help versus Rhino. Buffing up things to be 5/5s is great. Scar giving you the ability to buff for an extra 1 as well is awesome. So I feel like that's fairly winnable as well. Tinkerbell is just a nightmare for that deck. And Tinkerbell is a card that since set 5 or 6 or whatever, people just assumed is out of the meta. But it's very much back, and it's very strong. Right now, with no Zeus, no real consistent answers besides 5 characters wide and seeing strength on it. So it does a lot of work there as well. Again, I think actually I mentioned this before I keep going on because it feels valid. On the draw right now, if you're losing games, I wouldn't feel too worried about that. That just seems to be Lorcana. The on the play, on the draw disparagence is a lot further. That is why I'm mainly hyping up Sapphire decks, because Blurple, Sapphire Steel, and Green Blue, and just anything that really uses Sapphire has the ability to tighten the gap on going second, with the ability to ramp on 2, catch up, and then not just basically playing the game 1 turn behind. Because right now, if you're playing 1 turn behind, you just lose off tempo. Like, I've lost Amber Steel mirrors just because they're playing the thing before I play my thing, and you know, you look for a Calhoun, you don't find it. But with Sapphire, you have this ability to sort of jump them a bit. You can do some crazy stuff with putting Jasmine and shifted Jasmine into the Inkwell straight into a Tinkerbell, or you know, Tipo into Pleakley into just playing characters off the top like Hades, Sinks, and Vinchenko. Like, you have ways to kind of push the tempo back in your favor, and on the play, just being that turn ahead because you're on the play, and then being that turn ahead because you ramped is crazy. So, you know, going first with Blurple is huge because they get the Genie out so early. So you have to kind of fight back with your ramp, which is very doable. Is very much a thing, and that's why I've just been hyping up Sapphire decks over Amber Still Aggro, but Amber Still Aggro is very much still alive. And the one other deck I guess that's worth mentioning is Purple Steel. That's kind of really rearing its head, and I think in a format where everyone's fairly even on the playing field, even with the high rolls that you could say of Jasmine here, Purple Steel is still pretty good. And that one, really, if you can get the Jasmine shift down, again, it's going to be a like go-to every game, is trying to get the Jasmine shift just great, and then just trying to get Tinkerbell down to shut the board down. They can't reach their Purple Genie as quick as blurple can, so you have a little bit of time there to set other things up on the board to control the rest of the board. You know, they'll be playing Palace Guards, they'll be playing Calhoun, so set other things up to start controlling the board, and then make sure that you get your Steel Genie out. You maybe get some Smees, or just something to say that if you start establishing a Genie, I will just run into it with my character, so don't even bother questing with it. And then later on in the game, you can sing Strength or use Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell is just huge for locking down boards. It pretty much requires they will only quest with their evasions if they've got it free to do it, and if they do quest with anything else, you can do the 2 damage over, or you know, there's also some awesome plays where you'll lock the board down with a Tinkerbell, 1 damage across, and they won't turn sideways because you have a Steel Genie and they have a Purple Genie, and the next turn you just play Venchenko and just kill their Genie, and you've got a 4-5 and a 2-8, and you're questing for huge amounts. And what I found is great with Venchenko is you get him down, you play a Scar, and you just keep questing, because he'll become a 3-8 with a Scar down, and it will likely mean they run some characters into it, but because he's a 3-8 at that point, he just trades up so much better. You know, all those things that running in are probably going to be removed, or be with one strength left on them. You know, things like Lawrence's or Cobras or other pleakleys, other 3/4s like the Stitch. All those things will go down to just one health left, so you can clean them up with other stuff. You know, play a Tink and do a complete board wipe. It's really interesting, but yeah, that's kind of been the thoughts into Purple Steel. Is the same as most of the other game plans: get the Jasmine out, quest, ramp, and just slam those big bodies every turn, and keep the Genie in mind. If you manage to get a wide enough board, I don't always tend to get a wide enough board. Lilo is good in there. Lilo's had some underwhelming features because we're kind of not going for this huge wide that Purple Steel and Amber Steel do. We're more doing one great character at a time. You know, pleakley, great character. I love that film. You know, Jasmine out early into pleakley, into Tinkerbell, into Hades, Venchenko, just into spamming more characters every turn. Is kind of the game plan there. We don't really go double spelling, we don't really go wide, and because we're ramping, it's kind of hitting our hand size quite a lot. So yeah, Lilo feels a little bit under, but sometimes, you know, if you've got Smee, Happy, Genie, anything really, and you need to just trade up quite nicely, you can just play a Lilo. You know, turning Tinkerbell into a 6/5 is very, very good, just for controlling any board. But again, into Purple Steel, it's kind of hard to say a matchup guide because pretty much every game is the same. Just getting the Jasmine out early, managing your ramp with pleakley, putting characters into there, getting a Tinkerbell down to lock down the board, just all great stuff. Of course, options to put cards like Pete in here is good, but the list is fairly tight and you need to have a lot of allies in it for it to work, so maybe Pete just doesn't make the cut. I think if you did play Pete, you'd be removing probably Lilo, as that's like the other utility card, but that just feels so rough to say before set 9's physically out, that I'd want to cut Lilo. So all interesting stuff. The one note, actually, I guess, as I go through different matchups and saying that they're all pretty much the same, there is one matchup where it isn't, and it's any green deck that uses Clarabelle. Watch out before you Scar and banish something to draw like 12 cards, because they will just play a Clarabelle on you, and then it can be a bit rough, because then they could just bend to my will you as well. So that's the only matchup you kind of have to watch about using Scar. But everything else you can just into a green Clarabelle deck is just Jasmine quest, slam bodies down, watch out for if they maybe play a Baymax or something, and keep thought in that, and then that's when you'd play your pleakley to put it into the Inkwell. But it's strange, but there's no real aggressiveness to the deck. Look how many one questers are in there. We're mainly going for a full control lockout, and Venchenko is generally our like biggest quester. It's like that's the time when we start turning sideways. He's great. He comes in, does 3 damage, and then they have to do 8 strength, otherwise you get to 3 law return. But yeah, there's a kind of all the tips and like ideas on it, and really it's managing the low roll games, because the high roll games will completely carry you. I think a lot of people I've seen enjoy this list and play it, or this style of list, this BS ally style. I think what they've done is they've built it and they've gone to play with their mate, you know, in proxy or on the sim that we didn't talk about. They've gone and done that, and they've won like 4 games in a row because they've got Jasmine shift off, or they've just ramped and slammed, you know, 6 and 7s. That's great, but really do play a good like 50 games of this and see what you think. Play it when it doesn't work, play it when it does work, see if you can handle when it doesn't work, see how it feels, see all the lines, see the holes in it as well, because there is lots of them. I think there's a real big thing right now because a lot of these new, like the Lorcana in general has just changed so much because of basically they removed all the removal from the game and they said you draw barely any cards. So that's the way it's gone. I think it's quite an interesting thing that people are picking up a new deck, like they'll pick up a Clarabelle deck and they're like, oh wow, this is cool, I mega ramp to Clarabelle. No, even with green blue, like play it enough to realize, is this going to work for me? Is this in a long run, does it work? Same with Amber Still Aggro. It's like, oh, I just get turn 2 Tiana or just play a bunch of Tianas and I win the game. No, please do play like a good handful of the games. Play them on the draw especially, and see how you feel, because this is exactly the same sort of deck. It has the ability to be as powerful as all the other decks or powerful in its own right. That I think if you played a good 50 to 100 games, you'd just be like, wow, this is bricking, this is not working, I'm getting tilted playing it. Whereas you could just play blurple where it's consistent like crazy all the time. So yeah, I think it's a really fun deck. I think it still has its holes in it, but was on the fence. I did talk about something in testing if I thought this deck would make it into the DLC round. I think people love Sapphire Steel, so actually my opinion is it probably will make it in. Making day 2, I think people have got to run very, very hot. But thinking about it as well, Sapphire Steel back in the day, you had to run fairly hot to get into day 2 of it. You know, again, back in the day when it worked amazingly. When you got all the whole new worlds perfectly, when you got the dimes perfectly, all those things, when you ramped amazingly into high rooms, it all worked perfect. It feels the same kind of that here. It feels like we have the same problems as well. We can't remove evasive questers, which is quite interesting. But yeah, please do try it out. I think it's good fun. It's probably a deck that I'm going to keep posting about because, as I say, I know the decks that I'd like to play in the competitive scene, and I know this deck as well, and I think it does have some legs to it. I'd like to keep pushing it. There's so much more to explore of it as well, which is the fun thing. But I'm going to stop it now.